I'm Zachary Cartwright. This is Water and Food. Earlier today, I had the chance to sit down with Shaunti Luce at Clif Bar. We talked about their different products as well as their new pet food line. Hear what she has to say on water and food. All right, hi Shaunti. Welcome to the Water and Food podcast. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me. Yeah, this is my first time doing a podcast. So
Well, that's awesome. We're happy to have you. You know, when we first started this podcast, Clif Bar was one of the top companies that I wanted to reach out to and get on the show. I've had a lot of Clif Bars in my lifetime, and so I'm really excited to have you here.
nice.
Shanti, what is your role at Clif Bar? What do you do there?
So I'm the Senior Innovation and Technology Manager on our Food Safety and Quality Assurance team, which is kind of a mouthful. I think a lot of times people see innovation in the title and they assume that I have more of a lean towards that, but it is very much food safety focused.
hmm And how long have you been doing this role at Clif?
Actually, this May will be 6 years.
Oh wow.
Oh.
And what's that 6 years been like for you? Has it been fun or exciting, or has it been tough? What's it
It's
like?
it's been it's been good. It's been really good. Cliff is a great company to work for. It is a little weird to think that like the last 2 years I've been working from home. So 2 of the 6 years I've been working from home, but
Wow.
it's been great. Yeah.
And how did you land into this role? What did you do before this, maybe in school or other jobs? How did you prepare for this specific role?
So this role is kind of unique, and my background I think it set me up well for this role. So basically, I spent the first, don't want to age myself, but like first, let's call it the first chapter of my career working in food testing laboratories. And so one of the labs that I worked for, the first lab that I worked for, even before I graduated from college, it was very much focused on kind of the samples in, samples out model, which was great because it exposed me to sample methods and different type of food commodities and what type of issues those might have. And but it was very much just kind of on the testing side. But it also allowed me, like, anytime the salespeople were going out to visit a customer, I would always raise my hand, like, "Can I come along?" And so I just got a lot of exposure to a lot of different parts of the food industry. And then the
hmm
second lab that I worked for, it was a combination of a testing lab, a consulting lab, a research lab, and we did food microbiology testing, we did food chemistry testing, we had a pilot plant, we had sensory. And so when I would work on projects, I it wasn't just a matter of you give me a sample, I give you a result. It's let's talk about what your ultimate goal is. Let's make sure that we're getting there together. It's doing shelf life studies, with in conjunction with our sensory folks, in conjunction with our chemistry folks. And so it really was more of a consulting role.
hmm
That lab also, I was allowed to do a lot of traveling internationally, and so seeing how different countries handle food safety, issues and concerns and things like that, and even just testing methodologies was really, really helpful and set me up nicely for this role. And so this role at Cliff, it wasn't the role I applied for, but it's the
hmm
role that I got, and I like this role. It's really nice. It's very different every single day. Never gets boring.
And I think you brought up a couple really good points, and one of them is that you don't always get the job that you apply to, but you kind of land where your skill set takes you. So,
Yeah.
and my position has been very similar. And the second thing is that I think it's really important for students or people thinking about being in the food industry to get as much exposure as possible. And when you go into seeing a product being made in production or even traveling internationally, I think that creates a lot of excitement and learning what's out there and how other people or companies are trying to challenge different things that they're working on.
Yep,
So
for sure.
I'm wondering, in your role, you mentioned it's more towards food safety and not so much innovation, but are there certain things that you've been able to push for in your role that maybe Cliff Bar wasn't doing before, or new safety practices and anything like that?
So our food safety team is I mean, it was strong before I joined, and it
hmm
continues to be strong. My I do work on the innovation side, meaning I'm working with our cross-functional teams as we roll out new products onto the market. You know, as a food safety team, we're always looking at what, obviously the potential risks that may exist with our current ingredients, manufacturing partners, all of those things. But especially, in my role, working with the cross-functional teams on the innovation side, it's about okay, we're starting to work with ingredients that we haven't worked with before. What are the potential risks and how do we mitigate those risks? And so it
Mhm.
is, food safety is always evolving, and this isn't exclusive to Clif Bar by any means. All companies are having to try to figure out, how do we manage these potential risks, and so it is ever changing, ever evolving.
And how do these risks relate to the water in your product? So this is the Water and Food podcast, and so why is water important to the products that you make?
I mean, water is important to a lot of the products, and it's not just a Cliff Bar thing, but understanding how much water we're putting into the food, whether it's part of the ingredients, because people don't always think about that. They think, oh, well, is there water in the recipe? Well, yeah, there may or may not be water in the recipe, but there's also water coming in with certain type of ingredients. And so you have to look
Mhm.
at that as the full picture. And depending on what that process is for making that product, if you aren't baking that off, then having large amounts of water in your food could lead to issues, quality issues, food safety issues down the line. And so
Mhm.
it's important for our products because we tend to have low moisture food, and so understanding what the water activity levels are, that's a very key attribute for the majority of the products that we make.
And when in your process are you measuring water activity? Is this just on final goods? Do you monitor throughout production? What does that look like for your team?
So it just kind of depends. I mean, as our developers, our research and development team, as they're developing product, that's something that they're looking at. They may look at it, pre-process and post-process. Usually, once we move into the commercial phase, we're usually just looking at it, post-process. But it just kind of depends on what the product is. We have bars, we have things for athletes, we have cereal products now, or which we can talk about. We have pet food
Mhm.
coming out, so we have a lot of different products, and so it isn't always the same for all the products, but pretty
Sure.
much across the board, water activity is kind of an important target that we're looking at.
And is water activity something that Clif Bar has used since you've been there? Have you seen more of these measurements being taken over time, or what does that process look like?
It's always been an important thing for Clif
Mhm.
Bar, based on the type of products that we have. And so we have meters at our innovation center, we have meters in our research and development kitchens, we have meters at our own bakeries, and so yeah, it's ongoing. This isn't something new that we've been looking at.
Mhm. And I noticed that with a lot of companies, it's not just in one section, and it surely depends on the product, but it's really all around from R&D to quality control and production, being able to have those measurements so that you understand your products. What are some of the other challenges that you face when you try to come up with a new flavor or a new product? And we'll get to the pet food. What are some of the challenges that your team faces?
I mean, right now the big challenge that I think everybody's going through is supply chain. How do
Mhm.
how do we get the ingredients that we want to work with, to especially on the innovation side. I mean, everybody's having issues with supply chain with their existing lines. And now you talk about, well, we want to come out with new products, which means new ingredients a lot of times, and how do we get those things? But I think as we work outside of bars, so when we were working with cereal, it's there's a whole new process. It's a completely different process when you're making cereal or pet food or any of those things versus making bars. So there's a lot more things that we have to kind of educate ourselves on. But that's the exciting part, is when you get to learn
Right.
something new. We've got the bar process down pretty well.
And you've mentioned the starting ingredients a few times. Do you do anything once those ingredients arrive? Do you measure the water in them, or how do you monitor those ingredients so that you know that you can get a consistent final product?
We do look at the ingredients, and so we're working with our suppliers and understanding what are the attributes that they basically are measuring on a regular basis, and we are, therefore requiring certificates of analysis that go in with each lot of products, so that we make sure, things like, and water activity honestly isn't a big one that is always looked at on the ingredient side. It still tends to be more on the moisture side. I
Mhm.
think with some ingredients I would like to see that trend of looking at maybe moisture and water activity in conjunction
Sure.
rather than just moisture. But unfortunately, I think a lot of times people don't fully understand what water activity is. They think, well, we're doing moisture, so we're covered. And it's obviously, probably better than anybody, it's not the same thing. And so, yeah,
Sure.
we definitely, from the development work through the commercialization phase, we have we have certificates of analysis that are coming in. We have Cliff ingredient specs for all of our ingredients so that we say, okay, here are the chemical attributes, here are the physical attributes, here are the microbiological attributes. And then that way, when it gets to the manufacturing facility, they can say, okay, here are the requirements, and here's what this particular lot has. And yes, it's in spec, therefore we can proceed with, production.
And I see that really often, the moisture content and water activity, even though some industries or some companies may be really used to water, or excuse me, to moisture content. I do see more and more companies wanting both measurements,
Yep.
and that's something that we can easily do now.
Yep.
What is your favorite Clif Bar flavor? Do you have a favorite, or are you sick of Clif Bars? Have you tried them all?
No, no,
Is
no.
there one that you always go back to?
Yeah, so I'm a sucker for anything lemon. So Luna Lemon Zest is there. We now have mashups, which is a
Mhm.
lemon with a blueberry, which is very, very good. The Cliff cereal, the blueberry flavor is my favorite, and so I like to buy that. I had some fresh blueberries in there as well. It's good without
Mm.
the fresh blueberries as well. And then Cliff Thins, those are pretty
Mhm.
good. And then actually Z Bar protein chocolate mint. I
Mm.
sometimes will eat
Mhm.
those. I know they're supposed to be for kids, but we're all kids. But
That's
those
right.
sometimes I'll eat for dessert because it's like an Oreo cookie, but without the sugar. So it's
Sure.
good.
Well, I have
How about
a
you? Do you have
new
favorites?
favorite. Yeah, I have a new favorite. I got some of the holiday flavors this year, and I
Okay,
tried the peppermint bark, and I would say that's probably my favorite right now. Not
nice.
just because the flavor, but I really like the texture of that specific bar. So that one hits the spot. But I like a lot of them. Any chocolate, peanut butter, kind of the basic ones, but they're always really good.
Yeah.
What are the differences between Clif Bar, Luna Bar, and Clif Kid bars? From a maybe a taste perspective, but also what's going into these products to make them different?
Yeah. The process is different. We're developing bars for different eating occasions for different audiences, but it doesn't mean that Z bars are tailored for kids, and so therefore only kids can eat them. I just owned up to the fact that I eat the Z bar proteins. Those are good, and Luna bars were tailored for women, but we hear that men like them, just as much. And in fact, at one point we had a T-shirts that said something like "Real men eat Luna bars." So it really just kind of depends on what the occasion is.
Mhm.
And we have a whole athletic series where we have blocks and we have gels depending on what type of activity that you're participating in. And so there is information on our website that kind of gives a little bit of guidance as far as, okay, you're going out on a hike, here's the product that you probably want to take. So it is, there's crossover as far as the audience, but it's really about the eating occasion that we're going for.
And is one of those products in particular harder to make or presents more challenges, or just depends?
I think it just depends. I mean, like I said,
Sure.
with our bars, we've done them, for so long that we've got that dialed in. It's
Mhm.
as we work outside of the bar category that we have to, get more creative and educate ourselves on new processes and new equipment and things like that. Which is again it's the fun thing to do. So it's nice.
And I know people who consume Clif Bars, they're probably familiar that you have your Clif athletes. I was wondering if you could talk about the process of getting Clif athletes, and maybe if you have a favorite, or maybe somebody that you guys are going after now.
Yeah, I can't speak to that process. Yeah, I'm not
Sure.
involved in that process. I hear about the athletes along with the rest of the company. We have a whole team that does a fantastic job of developing those relationships with athletes. But it is interesting, I would say in the last, year or so, I think broaden the type of athletes, the type of sports that we are,
Mhm.
supporting. Before it was obviously we have a biking background, so it was very much, biking and rock climbing and things like that. One of the athletes that we started sponsoring, and he was on, one of our the packaging was Daniel Rowanchek, and he's
Mhm.
a para athlete, and he participated in the last Olympic Games. And I'll be honest, I had never heard of him before we started sponsoring him. And so that's what I love about the, Cliff sponsoring these athletes is it brings visibilities to these athletes that probably wouldn't
Mhm.
always get that much visibility. And this guy is awesome. I mean, he competes in the Boston Marathon and the New York Marathon, and he won a gold and a bronze at the Tokyo Games, and he's just I appreciate the fact that now I have him on my radar. I follow him on Instagram, and he's incredible to watch. So yeah, it's great.
Well, when I went online and looked at Clif Bar and look at all your athletes, I was really impressed by just the wide range of types of athletes now and the people that you have. So anybody listening to this, I really encourage them getting on and just seeing the athletes that you have and learning about their stories. And like you said, I think it helps give them some visibility. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. I'm glad that we could talk about that. Besides energy bars, what other products are you working on? I know we kind of briefly mentioned it before, but pet food. I'd like to spend some time on pet food and understand what happened, why you've decided to go from the human market to the pet market.
Yeah. So before I talk about the pet food, so we have the cereal, which I've mentioned that I'm a big fan of that. We have Cliff Thins, which is
Hmm.
it's still kind of a bar, but I like them. Sometimes in the morning I'll have a cup of tea, and then they just we've got a chocolate chip and a white chocolate mac and a chocolate brownie. So those are really good. But Cliff has a history of being very pet friendly. We're a dog friendly office when we were working in the office. Um, but it is something where when we were working in the office, people would come in and guests would come in, and you would see dogs everywhere. And we're an open concept office, but it was nice because you could walk around the office and you wouldn't have known it, but there probably were anywhere from 20 to 30 dogs in the office at any given time, and sometimes one dog barks and it sets off the the rest of them. But I just loved, I would bring in our dog, when I would come in on Fridays. And so it just kind of, I don't know how quickly the incubator team came to that conclusion, but it just makes sense. It's
Hmm.
in our DNA. And so, you think about through the pandemic, the number of families that added some type of pet to their family, and I think that's a big part of it is, you know, pets are part of the family.
Hmm.
That's who they are. They end up on our Christmas cards. We they end up on our Instagram. And so it was just, I think, a really natural transition to go from human food and then into pet food.
Well, on Cliff's website, one of the things that stands out to me is there's a quote on there that just basically says that you serve or Cliff Bar serves everybody in your family now, including your pet, and I really like that, and I think you're right. The pet is part of the family. I'm one of those people who got a dog during the pandemic. I was trying to bring her in, but they wouldn't let me. So,
Yeah.
but I'd be interested to get the Cliff pet food and see how she likes it and learn more about it. So
Yeah.
this is
Just
a
it.
really interesting pivot, but
Yeah.
one of the things that stands out to me is that I got to visit Cliff Bar in California. I guess it's been a few years now, but I remember seeing all the pets there, and it was awesome. I like how inclusive Cliff is, and being able to bring your pet in, I think is a great idea. So I'm
Yeah.
sure that helped push you guys in that direction. Did you have like tasting panels with the dogs that were in the office, or what did that process look like?
So yeah, I think they did some professional work, believe it or not. There's kind of professional dog tasters, but yeah, definitely had,
Mhm.
some consumer feedback. In fact, I was actually in the office yesterday and had a chance to bring some home and did some consumer work with our dog, and he loved it. He was at the packet before I even opened up the pouch. He sniffed it out and was just basically like, "Can I have some, please?" So he really enjoyed it. So I'm glad that now that we have that to offer him.
And are these products plant-based? I know a lot of your other products are.
Yes.
What are the ingredients going into these pet food
These
products?
are these are plant based, and I think the reason that we went plant based is, because I think a lot of times people think that dogs are natural carnivores,
Mhm.
and it's not to say that dogs won't eat meat if you if you feed it to them,
Sure.
but it is good to have that variety in there. So having fruits and vegetables and things like that, it provides things like antioxidants and fibers and things that dogs need. I know that growing up when I had a dog, our family had a dog, it wasn't about the nutrition side of it. It was about which is kind of the cheapest food. you know where
Right.
now it's about, I mean, our dog gets organic food, and so again, because they're part of our family, well, if we're eating organic or we're eating plant-based, why shouldn't our pet eat plant-based as well?
Mhm. And what is next for you and your team? What's the future maybe this year or 5 years, 10 years down the road? What's it look like for Cliff? What are some of the new things that you're working on?
Well, I mean, from a food safety standpoint, our team is working through the challenges. I mean, the food world, food ingredients, it's a global market, and understanding those challenges and those potential risks and understanding how we mitigate those, it's something that again is ever evolving. And so it is something that we're always educating ourselves on, what the up and coming trend is. Mycotoxins, for example, is something that, I think certain ingredients in certain industries probably paid a little bit more attention to than others, where I think it is one of those up and coming things that people are taking a look at. And as a company, we're going to continue to innovate and bring foods to people that they would like and that they need in their lives.
And kind of my final question for you is, your owner, Kit Crawford, talks a lot about your company being different from other companies. And what makes Cliff different? You touched on this a little bit at the start, but why should maybe a young food scientist or somebody looking for a new job or position, why should they consider Cliff Bar?
It is a very different company, and I think a lot of times people talk in the work life balance terms, and I mean, I think for Cliff, it goes beyond that. It's about being authentic as a company and being authentic as individuals. I think a lot of people, they go to work and they have their kind of their work persona, and then they go home and they have their home persona. At Cliff, you have one personality, you have one persona, and that was one of the things that I noticed immediately. But we're a five aspirations company, so it's not just about what is the bottom line. So we have five aspirations. We are sustaining our people, sustaining our communities, our planet, our brands, and our business in that order. And there's a lot of unique things that the company does. It's not just about being a dog friendly office. It's about, we have a speaker series called Luna Voices, where we have very unique and inspiring speakers that come in. People like Gloria Steinem, people like Betty Reed Sorkin, who became a park ranger at the age of 80 and is still a park ranger in her hundreds. We have an inspiring speaker series, where we have different speakers come in, like Steve Kerr, if you're a Warriors fan, Brene Brown. One of the ones that resonated with me, and probably one of the first ones that I saw, was a gentleman by the name of Mick Ebling. He works for a company called Not Impossible Labs, and basically they were doing this project where they were printing 3D arms for children in the Sudan, and it was just so inspiring. And so there's other programs like our ability to volunteer on company time. I've been able to work with a local agency, Scientific Adventures for Girls, where we are introducing girls as young as third grade to different science concepts, whether it's chemistry or engineering or biology. So it's the culmination of everything. But I do think that the bottom line is that we are an authentic company. We walk the walk, we talk the talk, and we get to be ourselves, which is just a great thing.
Well, Shaunti, thank you so much. I really appreciate your insights today. I'm glad we were able to cover all those different products. And like I said at the start, I've been wanting to get you guys on for some time. So really appreciate your time today and looking forward to seeing what you guys do in the future.
Yeah, no, thanks again for inviting me. I've used your equipment for the bulk of my career. So yeah, this has been good.
I'm Zachary Cartwright. This is Water and Food. Find this podcast on Apple iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts.